Hi everyone and welcome to another video tutorial on normalization. Today we're looking at October-November 2019 paper 2, and again we're going to look at the normalization aspect of this particular question number 8. So for question number 8, it says that we're going to use an employee text file to normalize, create a relational database normalized to the third NF, right? And then again, the client has decided that all database field names must be short. They need to be meaningful, consistent in style, and field names may contain underscore, but no spaces, right? Not spaces. Okay, so we're going to open this here text file in Excel, and then we'll check if there are any issues with it, because the question said we should open and examine the file. So anytime they say open and examine file, it means that there's something you need to correct in that particular file. Okay, so let's go straight to the question. And so we're looking at November 2019, right? So this one here. So we're going to open Excel, right? And we like so, and then we just drag this here into that, and then it opens it up, right? So once we've been able to open this text file, the next thing to see whether it has any issue. So here there's an empty space in here, so there shouldn't be empty field name. So we delete that. And once that is deleted, the next thing we're going to do is to check the field names to make sure they are consistent in style. So we will use underscore as the question has requested we can use or may use. So date of birth, I'll just keep it as date of birth again. And now move to the next item. Job is fine. So place of employment, I can keep it as place underscored employed, right? Place employed. And then here, employment. So address of employment, we just do it address 1. This is address 2. And that whole thing is address 3. And then address 4. And then date of employment, I can just date employment started. I can also look at start date, right? Start date or date employed. Okay, so we just use date employed here, ed date employed. So that becomes the field names for this particular database. Now, the next thing to do is to go through this file to see if it is established in 1NF. So we're going to basically make use of this rule here, which that can help you to normalize under 5 minutes. So here we have 1NF. We need to achieve 1NF, identify functional dependency, decompose a table, and then we create relationship, right? And then again, in this table, we have some data types which I want us to look at. So the date field here has no duplicate. When we check through, you notice that it has no duplicate. And so because of that, I can use it in combination with the first name and the surname to form a composite key, right? Now, however, if the database is very big, the best thing to do is to introduce your own primary key, which is also referred to as a surrogate primary key, right? If the database is very small, then we can do a combination of this to create the database composite key, right? Okay, so for this particular paper here, we notice that this is not a big database. We have about 169 items, so it's not too big. And so if you check through here, conditional, highlight, and duplicate, we notice that this date here doesn't have any duplicate. And the reason why we can use it in combination with this and that surname and forename to form a composite key or a compound key, right? Now, however, we can also just go ahead and introduce a new primary key for this database that will uniquely fetch any other record within this database, right? But we'll keep to the first approach since this database is not very big. Now, going to go ahead now to look for duplicates in this table. So if I look through the job table, so what I'm going to do first is to filter this table right there. And then here I check for duplicates in this space. And then since this here is a primary key, this three set is a primary key. That's why I'm moving to the next item to look for duplicate, right? So I go to this here and go to, again, conditional formatting to find duplicate. And then I notice that they are duplicates in here, right? So since they are duplicate, to make life easier for me, I'm just going to filter it from A to Z, just to rearrange everything in ascending order. And when I do that, it becomes easier to glimpse through to see which item is not dependent on what. So if I look here, I notice that place employed is not functionally dependent on job. It's not functionally dependent on job because administration or office has this data, which is different from that, right? This here are basically the same. So kind of look like they're functionally dependent on that. But if we go down further, yeah, they appear to be functionally dependent on this. And then, so we're going to go up again. So this is functionally dependent on these two, but not this one. If we check this, it's not functionally dependent on that. Now, since address 123 kind of talk about the same item, then it suggests to me that this here and that here cannot be separated from each other. So this is to say that the addresses are not functionally dependent on job. Then finally, we check with the date employed. We notice that this date is different from that date when we compare this data, right? So this is office, and this is again office, the same item here, but the output here are different. And so since they are different, they are not functionally dependent on that. So here I can just click and clear the rule on that, and then now check for functional dependency here again. So now again, I'm going to highlight this again to check for duplicates. So again, there are some duplicates in this table. So again, I'm going to do A to Z. Sorting from A to Z, I notice again that this here is grouping this whole item as one, and everything here seems to be the same as that. So what I'm going to do is going to check if this and that is functionally dependent. So I'm going to highlight and go to that. All right. So if we go through carefully, we notice that this here is pulling out exactly the same item for this, but not that. So it means that this here is functionally dependent on that. This here is not highlighted because it doesn't have a duplicate and it's pulling out the same item here. These are pretty much the same here. If we check through here, that is the same. This here is also same. That too is the same. This here, going to mess up. All right. So these two are the same. If we come here with the Mexican, we notice that the outputs are the same. So we can basically run through all this here just to be sure if we are getting the same output. So clearly we can see that the outputs are the same as far as the address is concerned. So now let's check this part here. We notice that everything here is virtually the same as far as the database is concerned. So clearly this here is functionally dependent on the addresses. Place employed is functionally dependent on address 1 all the way to 4. Now, another way to go about the same thing is to unselect the filter and check the first one and see what it brings out, and then go to the next and just keep up with the process, and then you can easily tell that they are functionally dependent on each other. Okay, so now we've noticed that this here is functionally dependent on the addresses, so we're going to separate them out from this table and put them into another table. So we're going to clear the rule and remove the filter, or simply put, I can just backspace till the filter is gone. And I know that the place employed and addresses are functionally dependent on other. So I copy them and bring them to a new table Once you bring them to a new table, you go to data and you delete duplicates, right? So we delete duplicates and have this unique item. Now, this table here doesn't have a unique identifier. So there's a need for us to introduce a primary key in here. So I'm going to call this here employment ID, right? Employment ID right there. Or I can have an underscore just to make it consistent with the rest of the item. So employment ID right there. So this is 1 and this is 2, and then we select this 2 and replicate. Now, there's a very good reason why I brought the employee ID right here. The reason is I'm going to use, okay, so we're going to use the VLOOKUP to find the IDs here. So this here is a lookup value, and then we going to find a table of array. So this here is a table of array, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the position of this here, so I'm going to log the table. The position of the column I'm interested in is 6, and then I want the exact match, right? So this will give me, so we are referencing this in sheet 2, but this is giving us employee. So we're looking at sheet 1, sorry, that's sheet 1 here, okay? So that is sheet 1 is what we're interested in here. That's it. Okay. So we put in F2, that is right there, and then we are interested in this here. We are making reference. The table of array is in this particular sheet, so we select the table of array, and our interest is in in the sixth item. We need the exact match, and so that's what we're going to do, and we replicate this value for that, right? So once this is done, we can now go ahead, copy this here and paste it as a value, right? Okay. Now, however, you're going to have an error if you place this right here before you do the VLOOKUP. The reason being that the VLOOKUP in general has its own issues. Okay, so what it means is that if we bring this primary employment ID here, and sorry, here, okay, if we bring it here, what it means is that if we use the VLOOKUP formula, I'm just going to do right another one here. If we do the VLOOKUP here, it will give us some issues. So let's just, this is just to double explain why I did the lookup value at the last place, right? So this is just to explain why I did the lookup value at the last place of the table and not at the first part, all right? So here, the lookup value in this case. So first of all, we need the same title here as employment ID, okay? And so now we're going to put in the formula, VLOOKUP. So that is it. And then the lookup value is that, comma, right? And then we go to this sheet here and select right all the way to this point here, right? Right there. And this here is referencing employment, which is the first table, but we need the second table. So I'm going to use sheet 1. That is where I want the information from. And then I lock this cell here, all right, by doing F4 or FN F4, right? So when this cell is locked, the next thing to do is to tell us a position where I'll find the ID, and the position in here is 1. That is where the IDs or the primary keys are, which we want to reference here as a foreign key. Okay. Now, once we put in 1, the next thing to do is to put in an exact match, which is 0. Now, you notice that this is giving me not applicable. The only reason why this is happening is because the lookup value appeared or came before the value you are looking for. the inherent problem with the VLOOKUP is that if the value you are searching for comes before the lookup value, it won't work, right? So the reason why we are having this error. But however, if I change the position of this here and bring it to the last part here, right, and delete this here, what I'm going to do here in the formula to correct it now is to look for 6, that is a position 6, and then click on OK. Now I'm having reference error. So yeah, I need to use F here, not E. So F. So now you notice that the reason why I'm using F is that it extends from 1 to F, and F is where I have what I'm looking for. Now you notice that once I did that correction, it's giving me 1 as the right answer. And if I replicate this here, it gives me exactly what I have here, right? So that is the issue we have with VLOOKUP if you are going to use it to do normalization. Okay, so that was just for demonstration purposes. So we're going to delete this here since we have copied it into a new table and deleted duplicate. Okay, now the next thing to do here is to again check for duplicate if there are any. So we have checked already for this, and we notice that it's not functionally dependent on that. This is not functionally, this is just a new record we've introduced. We know that this was not functionally dependent on that, and these 3 here are primary keys. So basically what it means is that with this particular table, we are done normalizing. So that is all there is to do as far as normalization is concerned. So we're going to go ahead and create a relational database, because that is what the question wants us to do. We're going to go access, and we're going to go to blank database, and you select your folder, go to your working area where you want this file to be saved, and let's see the name this file is supposed to be saved as. Okay, so for this particular database, we are supposed to save it as nov 19, and then we follow it by a center number and candidate number. So what we're going to do here is we're going to save this as nov 19, followed by a center number GH073, and then followed by my candidate number 0012. So we go to access, blank database, save this in where you want to retrieve it. So I'll save this here. We do nov 19 underscore GH073 center number 0012. Click on OK and create. Close this table. External data, new data source, text file, Excel, sorry, and go to where you have it saved, right there. Okay. So the first one is the employee details. So first name contains that. That is that. No primary key here. Finish, and we go to the design view. Select all these 3, and click on primary key, and save it, and close. Do the same for the next table. Right there. Okay. Address. Go to next. First row contain field names. We need to be sure if the data types are same. So this is not displaying that. So here we're going to make sure that we change the data type here to text, right? So first row contain field names, and here we go all the way right there. This here double, we change it to short test, and that's it. So the primary key is obviously the employment ID. So this appears to have an underscore, so sorry, a space, so we'll fix that later. So ID, click on finish, close, and then go to the design view, and then okay, there's no space, so that's the employment ID. All right, and then we finally going to create the relationship between these two uh, by putting this can go out there, the employee ID to the employee ID, and create. All right, so that brings us to the end of this particular video tutorial. So till we meet again, bye bye.